is your vision or your goal for mural art in the community, whether that's Toronto or even in Canada or the world, really?
My vision would be for every community to have a mural where they're represented, that they feel proud of, that they can refer to, that, that the whole community can sort of like identify with.
Hello, and welcome to the Impact Insiders podcast, the podcast that explores real-life examples of people and organizations that are making an impact. My name is Chloe Dobbins, and I am a social impact consultant at Relative Impact. I would like to start by acknowledging that this podcast is being recorded on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I would like to introduce our guest for today, Marta Keller-Hernandez. Marta is the Managing Director of Mural Roots, and we will talk about how mural art is an integral part to community revitalization and building. Marta, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Chloe, for having me.
Until you notice it, art is all around us. It brings color and life to cement jungles. It immerses you into a world of metaphors and symbolism, and it gives a voice to stories that go unheard. I have had the privilege to be exposed to the world of mural art throughout my life, and more recently seen the important work in promoting and preserving mural art with the work Marta does with and for Mural Roots. So, before we start with your experiences and how you got involved with Mural Roots, please could you provide a bit of context on what exactly mural art is?
Well, that's a really good question. To be honest, and I think if we look at the Wikipedia definition, it's really any art that's being produced in two dimensions. And that can be either on a wall, it can be on the ground. There are like anything that's really on a flat surface, regardless of the surface. But this is, I would say that the mural art, like the definition of mural art really, it's evolving. And we have actually recently engaged our community asking, what do you think mural art is? What do you think a mural artwork is? What do you consider a mural artwork to be? And we've received like a lot of varying, I guess, opinions, comments on it so far. Many people still identify it as like a two-dimensional artwork, usually in the public realm, but it can also happen indoors. But yes, there are some artworks these days that are also produced on vinyl and they're installed in the public realm. So some people are starting to consider those mural art as well. So I would say that this is really an ongoing conversation with the community who's actually producing mural art. So right now we're doing a little bit of research in that sense.
I, for a long time, always, until you brought it up to me, thought that mural art and graffiti was something that was the same or similar. And I wasn't yet exposed to the career pathways that artists can take to explore mural art. So if you could just touch maybe quickly on the important difference between mural art and graffiti.
I would say that as mural art has evolved, more people understand that mural art is in a way different from graffiti. Graffiti has always had sort of a guerrilla component where it's more about complaining about the establishment, about things like it's bombing a wall, usually illegally. Mural art is not necessarily illegal. Actually, Mural Roots' job in many of the projects we undertake is to secure a wall that can be legally painted by an artist. So even though the graffiti aesthetics is now very much part of mural art, there's still illegal graffiti and tagging that happens mostly in urban environments, I would say. But there are many artists who have managed to build a career really in producing legal artworks, not only here in Canada, but across the world.
Interesting. And you're from Spain. And
Yes.
how did you get exposed to mural art, and how maybe is it different in Spain than it is in Canada? You kind of expand on that because that's really interesting to me.
This is going to be a very long answer, I feel. The funny thing is that I wasn't really exposed to mural art in any way in Spain. I mean, I say we because my husband and I moved to Toronto in 2012. And before 2012, I wasn't really working in the arts. My background is in tourism. So it was very much focused on historic sites and history, culture, but not necessarily the arts. So when we moved to Canada, I decided to really like not even build, like it was like start a career in the arts. And I went to college and took a program in arts administration, and I worked for a couple of publicly funded galleries. And the work at the gallery was great because it was a really good way of building my resume, but also like being exposed to different experiences and working with artists, which is something that I very much appreciate. However, the gallery is something that happens like it's like the experience, the way people experience the art in galleries, it's very much indoors. And mural art has this component of the fact that it happens in the public realm. So you can just like, go on your way to work and you see a really great mural project. So you're sort of like exposed to art on your daily commute, which is something that doesn't happen with galleries because you have to make the case for going to galleries, right? So again, I didn't really know much of mural art other than whatever artworks I could enjoy in here in the city. But I saw an opportunity for a program manager at Mural Roots back in 2017, so almost 6 years ago. And I was like, why not? Maybe this, like, I was actually very interested in learning more about the practice. So I applied and I got the job. And that's when I really started learning about what mural art was. My very first day at the work was actually Mural Roots 18th National Mural Symposium. So that was my very first day, was just like attending a symposium where I was gonna learn, I thought, like a little bit about mural art. So I went from like knowing nothing into a deep dive in like mural art in general. So I got to learn about project management. I got to learn about all these amazing projects that had taken place in 2017, and there were a few that were super exciting. I got to meet artists. I have to say that the mural art community has been the most welcoming that I've been part of because I knew nothing, and yet they welcomed me into the community. And that is something that I will always take with me and that I will always value. So yeah, it was pretty much going from like nothing to, like a little bit, like 2 days. And then when I took over this position as the managing director in 2018, that was, it allowed me to really like start making decisions over, you know, what the organization was going to be doing over time, but also how can we better support the community. So that really pushes you into learning more about the issues and challenges and barriers that the mural art community faces, not only in Toronto, but across Ontario and even beyond Ontario. Yeah, start shaping, like having a say over shaping programs really that better support the community. So honestly, I went from like knowing nothing into knowing, I would say a little bit. Like I wouldn't consider myself an expert yet. There are artists who've been doing this for like a million years and they know way more than I will know. It's good to be able I mean, it's good to be in a position where you can actually support the community and feel like the programs that you're offering and the projects that you're undertaking are meaningful to artists and the communities we serve.
I love that answer. And I really felt the same at the Walls for All event that Mural Roots co hosted. Very much artists everywhere and all different types of people in the same room talking about mural art and talking about definitely the lot of intersecting topics that mural art is involved with. So, with advocacy, for example, with or lack thereof sometimes, and professional development, and all of these things. So, I think that leads us into my next question very well, actually. But so, mural art as a vehicle for community revitalization and building is what we have long talked about.
Yeah.
And my question is, what role does advocacy play in the work that Mural Roots does?
I would say that, I mean, advocacy understood broadly, it applies, I guess, or it supports, helps, whatever we want to call it, both communities, but also artists. So I would say that we do advocacy in multiple ways, but we don't actually call it advocacy. And that is really interesting how sometimes we use like random words, not necessarily like the right word to identify something. For example, let's say that as a private sponsor comes to us and they want to produce a mural. Well, one of the advocacy pieces that we do, but it's just like so ingrained in us that we don't call it advocacy, it's really convincing this private sponsor that they're better off with a community engaged mural than just like showing up and painting something in a community where the community is not going to feel represented or has not been part really of having a say over the final design that they're going to see. So much of the work that we do is really like walking potential clients or sponsors, funders, whatever we want to call it, walking them through this, like the process of what it means to produce an artwork that's community engaged and the benefits associated with producing an artwork that's community engaged. To be honest, commissions will always exist, and there are artists who are not interested in engaging the community. They just want to do their thing, and that's perfectly valid. However, Mural Roots has focused over the years in community engaged mural art. So, because it's more meaningful to us. So, yeah, the advocacy piece comes into like walking someone with the funds into this is the kind of project that you would be more interested in, but also doing advocacy with communities in terms of, like there's this potential sponsor here who wants to invest in your community. And that might bring sometimes like tensions and people questioning like, so, okay, so what's behind these dollars? Like, why do they want to invest on this? So being a sort of the like intermediary, I guess, like, facilitator in between those two voices so that we can find values that align for a project to happen. And then I would say that the third advocacy piece is like making sure that the artists are paid fairly, that they're actually being paid and they're not doing this for only exposure, which is one of the main issues, that people think that anybody painting on the street is just doing it because they want, which is not true. This is a job and people need to be paid for it. Like we all like getting paid for it. So yeah, like making sure that the artists are being supported, that their visions are being taken into consideration. So really, I would, if I had to put it in like just a few words, I would say that our role as a facilitator, it's really an advocacy role, because we're constantly advocating to make sure that, like everyone's values align, that the project is being steered in the right direction, and that all the various stakeholders are really finding that common ground for a project to be successful. Does
Yeah,
that answer the question?
it does.
A little bit.
And also just the work that I've seen with Mural Roots is very much putting the artist first and then not necessarily everything second, but that the most important piece of mural art is the artist sometimes. And that's something that not a lot of professions, I feel, can say about the work that they produce also, is that people at the heart of it are the ones that matter the most. So
Yes, but it's also a little bit of like finding the right fit, meaning like the right artist for the right community.
mhm.
So that's also part of the advocacy, like, like just not maybe bringing someone who doesn't really know anything about the community, or who does not really represent the community, who's not going to do a good job about representing the community. So sort of like there's an adjudication process usually where we choose artists to sort of like match them with the community where the mural is going to be living. And yeah, it's like it's really prioritizing, like making sure that the right decisions are being made for a project to be successful. Just not producing for the sake of producing. It's the process that we put the most emphasis on, I would say, that we prioritize.
Yeah, and also much more onto the concept of empowering current and emerging artists in the sense to place make and place keep. I
Yeah.
think it's a very important part of including communities in murals, and just that process of how do you create space for or address the barriers and the obstacles that a lot of artists have to face in addressing or becoming artists.
Yeah, absolutely. We do commit to supporting emerging artists as much as we can, as well as diverse artists. So people from different walks of life, and with some of them are self-taught, like they didn't even go to school for, you know, learning how to be an artist. So yeah, it's really, I would say, like maybe like meeting artists where they are at, and being able to offer the right opportunities for those who are seeking out that, that next opportunity to grow and advance in their careers.
Yeah, very true. And one of my questions that I think is really interesting that you touched on is that it is a job. Mural art is a job, and therefore we should be paid for it. Artists should be paid for it. But there is a discrepancy sometimes with the public and private funds available for mural
Yeah.
art. And so having a say, depending on where the funding is coming from, of what kind of murals are being produced or portrayed across a city, for example,
Yeah.
and the impact that it does have. So my question really, and I think this is maybe a question for you, but also for Mural Roots as a whole, is what is your vision or your goal for mural art in the community, whether that's Toronto or even in Canada or the world, really?
My vision is really, it's twofold, I guess. For every artist to be able to produce the work they like, that they personally like. Some artists identify as community artists, and they would rather, like produce artwork that's community engaged. But there are many artists out there who do not identify as community artists. They're just visual artists. And, they would just want to produce artwork with their own style, and they don't want anybody to have a say over it. So my vision would really be to offer, I mean, for the sector itself, if we want to call it that way, like, or field, to offer enough opportunities for everyone to fulfill their vision as an artist, right? So that we have some artworks that are just based on artistry or artistic excellence, and there are other artworks that might be community engaged, and maybe like the whole goal is not the actual artwork, it's the process, which is usually the case with community arts. So that would be my vision for artists. In terms of communities, my vision would be for every community to have a mural where they're represented, that they feel proud of, that they can refer to, that, that the whole community can sort of like identify with. That also serves as, like wayfinding. And you say, well, when you get to the mural, turn right, and things like that, right? Something that's really, that everyone connects to. So that would be ideal. Like if, not just because mural art is very much an art form that takes place in urban environments, for rural communities as well, to be able to have, murals that they feel connected to, that it represent them. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
I think I'd like to end that here because I think that was a great way to conclude. So thanks very much to Marta for this fascinating and informative discussion. We will include all the links and references we discussed today in the episode show notes. This has been an Impact Insiders podcast powered by Relative Impact. Subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss future episodes. For more information about Relative Impact and the work we're doing, check out our website and sign up to our newsletter to get updates directly to your inbox.